Phantom versus Mavic. Hey guys, Sean Michael here with the Sean Michael Simulation channel where we talk about photography and all sorts of topics that might be of interest. I get a lot of questions about drones. And today we're going to talk about a hot topic for anyone who's going drone shopping: DJI Phantom or DJI MAVIC. Now, some of you out there who are drone shopping are going to immediately say you are a DJI fanboy because you just talk about DJI drones. Well, I'm not really a DJI fanboy, and I am open to trying different drones from different drone manufacturers. However, many years ago, I bought into the DJI system with my very first drone. I was generally pleased with the technology. They were first to market, especially here in the United States. So I went with DJI early on, and I've kind of stuck with them because the technology has rapidly advanced over the years, as you will see, because I'm going to share with you some of my different drones that I've owned over the years. And here we have a true relic, a dinosaur. This is the DJI Phantom 1. This was my very first drone, and I bought this many years ago, probably 6 or 7 years ago. And it was white originally. For some reason, I plasti dipped it black. So I've got kind of a really uniquely ugly two-tone black look going. The very first Phantom drone had no camera. So you had to buy a bracket and attach basically a GoPro or action camera to the bottom of the drone. And I did that, and I really ended up with some very poor footage. And now I'm going to try to show you some of that footage if I can get it to work. So please bear with me as I attempt to set up a stream. We're going to share the screen and take a look at the very first footage I ever got with the Phantom. And yes, you may be able to hear the whine of those propeller blades. The first Phantom was very raw. It really felt like a, let's see, sorry, I shared the wrong window there. It really felt like a hobbyist product, and it was. It was the type of product that you needed to be able to take apart and reassemble. And I actually did some work on my very first Phantom drone. And you can see the footage was very raw. Really, it would not be considered acceptable at all today. At the time, I was just thrilled that I was getting aerial shots, right? So that was the Phantom 1. I wouldn't recommend one of these old drones to anyone. It's really quite a crude piece of technology. Now, from the Phantom 1, I went to the Phantom 3. And this is the remains of my Phantom 3. The Phantom 3 crashed, sadly, in a canyon in Utah. But the Phantom 3, of course, had a built-in camera, which you could get a 4K camera. And you could see they were making some significant advancements to the gimbal structure and apparatus. Unfortunately, mine just suffered devastating damage in a terrible crash. And this is pretty much all that's left of it. But I've often said that moving from the first generation Phantom to the Phantom 3 was like going from a Model T to a Rolls Royce, or at least a Mercedes M-Class, because it really was a vast improvement on the very first drone. And so now I'll take you to the current Phantom that I own. I've owned a Phantom 4 base model, and this is the Phantom 4 Pro. Now, the Phantom 4 Pro has several things going for it. First of all, why would you choose the Phantom platform over the MAVIC platform? It's bigger. It's more substantial. If you have any kind of cross breeze or wind, the Phantom is going to hold up better. It's a more substantial body with heavier duty props. And in the case of the Phantom 4 Pro, you have a 1-inch sensor inside this camera that's capable of shooting 4K video at 60 frames per second. Really nice frame rate. It really takes beautiful video footage. And I've been very pleased with the Phantom series overall. Certainly, if you are looking to professionally produce drone footage, then you need to think long and hard about the Phantom series, because that 1-inch sensor on the Phantom 4 Pro, and that's the version 2.0 that I own, by the way, of the Phantom 4 Pro. The 1-inch sensor really produces wonderful footage. It has excellent dynamic range, and being able to record at 60 frames per second at that 4K resolution is incredible. And by the way, you really need a lot of horsepower on your computer if you're going to shoot 4K 60p, because it will tax even the most advanced of computer processors. So overall, I've had a very good experience with the Phantom series. The downside of the Phantom series has to do with bulk. Here's the Phantom controller for the Phantom 4 Pro version 2.0. I do not have the controller with a built-in LCD display. If you're going to go for a Phantom to produce professional quality drone footage, I recommend you pony up a few extra $100 and get the model with the built-in display, because I really kind of hate having to attach an iPad mini or my phone to this Phantom 4 controller. The controller itself is massive. It's bulky. The Phantom with the controller together really have a very large footprint. I carry around a plastic case, and I keep them in that case, but I mean, it is a substantial, bulky piece of gear. So it's just, for my purposes, I find the Phantom to be a little bit of overkill. If you are shooting professionally and planning to sell stock footage, then absolutely you should look at the Phantom series. For most people, however, if you are just wanting to share drone footage with your friends, family, and on social media, you need to be thinking about the MAVIC series. Now, I'm going to show you a MAVIC compared to a Phantom. Again, here's my Phantom 4 Pro version 2.0. And here is my older MAVIC Pro. So this is the first generation MAVIC Pro. And I sadly crashed this thing a couple of times over the years. As you move up in the DJI range, what you're going to find is you're paying for features. Some of the features are software features. Some of the features are hardware features. So on the Phantom 2.0, for example, you get collision detection 360 degrees all the way around the Phantom. If it comes within 6 to 10 feet or so, colliding with any kind of structure, certainly a building, a telephone pole, a tree, it should give you an alert. And if you have it activated, it will actually stop in place and not allow you to crash into the object. More on that later. With this first generation MAVIC, I believe it had maybe 0 collision detection. Maybe it just had forward-facing collision detection. Again, it's been a few years since I've used this one. But you can see the form factor with the arms folded out might be similar. But with the MAVIC, you can do this little magic trick where you fold in the prop arms and you end up with a much more compact form factor. So there we have the first generation MAVIC Pro, and here's the current Phantom. Phantom does not fold. So this footprint never gets smaller. And I want to point out that the MAVIC itself has evolved. So this is a first generation MAVIC. Big problem I had with the first generation MAVIC was the gimbal. I frequently had issues with the gimbal becoming easily damaged. I think, now, to be fair, I did suffer one crash. It was a bad crash. I replaced the camera and gimbal apparatus, and it was just never the same. And it's not just me, because I've heard from a lot of people who had problems with the gimbal on the first Mavic. Next up, we have the Mavic 2 Zoom. Now, Mavic 2 Zoom really improved on the original Mavic in a lot of different ways. One of the key improvements is not frequently touted on the headlines that come out in these press releases, but it has to do with the image processing software and the image processor inside. That even though you're shooting with a similar size sensor at similar frame rates, you're actually getting better results. And with the Mavic 2 Zoom, they really improved the gimbal apparatus. I think you may be able to see it's much less complex. It's much more sturdy and more stable. They made a lot of minor improvements to the body. Even the gimbal protective gear that goes on the front is a little easier to use. Well, trust me, it is. And yet, the Mavic 2 is a heavier, bulkier drone, even than the original Mavic. I mean, there's a noticeable difference in weight because the Mavic 2 Zoom, it includes more technology. There is more protection around the radius of the drone. You get 360 degrees of collision protection. So that's the Mavic 2 Zoom. Mavic 2 Zoom has the smaller sensor that's put out by DJI, but I've found that I'm typically recording drone footage in good light. And in that good light, I find these small sensors do a reasonable job. They're not as good as the 1-inch sensors. And if I really want to get the best quality drone footage, I'm going to use the Phantom 4 Pro 2.0. But I want to show you a couple other differences between the Phantom and the Mavic series. I'm going to pivot back to the controller. The Phantom 4 has this big bulky controller, whereas the Mavic has this much smaller controller. It's about a third of the size of the Phantom controller. And it's really designed out of the gate to use your cell phone or portable media device. I don't know, you might be able to fit a mini iPad in there to act as your display. Now, the same is true with the Phantom controller, but the Phantom controller is just so much larger. Now, this has a much smaller battery and is going to run out of battery faster. And with either one of these controllers, you're going to be fiddling around with your phone to try to attach it. And I found it pretty frustrating in real practice. So what I've done is invest in the, I believe, $700, yes, $700 DJI Smart Controller. And I have a little aftermarket case on here. This smart controller uses OcuSync 2.0. Now, sadly, the Phantom series does not support OcuSync 2.0, not even the Phantom 4 Pro that I own. With OcuSync 2.0, you get a much more reliable connection between the drone and your controller. And best of all, the smart controller has a built-in LCD display, so you don't have to fool around with the cell phone. And it fires right up. It really speeds up the process of getting your bird in the air. So when we are traveling with our RV, for example, I will typically be using the Mavic 2 Zoom. Why did I opt for the Zoom over the Mavic 2 Pro? Well, for the Zoom. I think if you're into video as opposed to being into still photography, then the Zoom may be the Mavic to choose, because I love that zoom functionality. And I also really like some of the effects that you can do. You can do like what is called the Hitchcock zoom dolly effect, where the drone backs up while simultaneously zooming forward, and it creates a really interesting video effect. So you can do a few things with the Mavic 2 Zoom that you can't do with the Mavic 2 Pro. And another example would be wildlife. You can zoom in and video wildlife while disturbing them less because you don't have to get quite as close to the wildlife. And I may point out that pretty much all of these drones since the Phantom 3 are relatively quiet. DJI has made a lot of progress over the years in making these drones more quiet. And I've been very pleased with everyone that I've bought in the past 3 or 4 years. And if you have an original Mavic Pro, you can attach quiet props to it because DJI came out with, I believe they called it the Platinum Edition of the Mavic Pro, and it included quiet props, those attached to the older Mavics, and work great. So the final Mavic I want to talk about is the Mavic Mini. Now, if you've been following my channel, you may know that I brought the Mini to Southeast Asia recently, took it to Thailand and Burma on kind of a 2-month walkabout throughout that region. And I loved having the Mini with me. I mean, I did a Mini review that I shot on the streets of Bangkok, Thailand. But the Mini is so small, so lightweight. I believe it's 249 grams. So if you're carrying the Mini, it fits beneath a lot of registration requirements for a lot of governments, certainly in North America. But I found that in Southeast Asia, they're very drone friendly. They're really more free in Southeast Asia to fly drones than we are in North America. We have more government bureaucrats wanting to regulate everything we do. So like when I went to Burma, I thought I was going to encounter a lot of resistance flying a drone. People loved it. Anytime I broke out the drone in Burma or in Thailand, for the most part, people were very supportive and liked it. I always ask for permission first, if I'm traveling overseas especially. And usually your guide or the people you're with, the locals, will advise you whether or not you can fly it. So some final thoughts on Phantom versus Mavic. I found that the Phantom, of course, is going to be a little more stable in windy conditions and windy environments, but the Mavic is surprisingly good. It's surprisingly stable in high wind environments, and I've flown it in places like the islands of southern Thailand. I took it literally half a mile or a mile off the coast of some of these islands out in the Gulf of Thailand, really high wind environments. And the Mavic Mini was stable. I've had some people tell me they think that the Mavic Mini would flip over. I haven't had any issues flying the Mavic Mini in wind. I have received warnings. If there's a high wind environment, you will get a warning that you really need to land your drone. But I just haven't had any kind of problem. I haven't lost a drone to wind yet. Yeah, I'm knocking on wood. There are a few things about the Mavic series that I like better than the Phantom. Obviously, the portability comes to mind, but beyond the portability, there are some software advantages to the Mavic series. I really like all those built-in DJI fly modes. And a lot of the times, the Phantom series does not include those, especially the Phantom 4 Pro 2.0. You know, you would think when you're ponying up the cash to buy the top of the line Phantom that you're going to get all the bells and whistles from a software standpoint that DJI offers. No. In fact, apparently that word pro means they think professionals do not use those quick shot modes that you'll find generally on the Mavic series. Even the little Mavic Mini, which has some pretty stripped down software, includes some of those quick shot modes that I really like. I'm talking about the classic sort of droney shot and also just circling a subject, or maybe the helix mode where the drone spins around and goes up into the air. I like all those DJI quick shot modes and have found them to produce really compelling footage. Quite often it's the type of footage that no matter how good of a drone pilot you are, you could not replicate. So I prefer, drumroll please, the Mavic. If you were to come to me and ask me what drone to buy, I'm going to direct you to look at the MAVIC series first. If you're looking to create social media, you're looking to make YouTube videos, you're looking to share videos with friends and family. Now, if you're looking to make professional quality video that you're going to sell, like as stock footage or what have you, then yeah, then maybe you should look to a Phantom. Not knocking the Phantom. I've owned, I guess, 4 Phantoms over the years. I still own 2. I have the Phantom 4 Base and the Phantom 4 Pro. But I have 2 armed and operational MAVICs, the MAVIC 2 Zoom and the MAVIC Mini. And I know which ones I find myself using most often. And it's always the MAVIC. The MAVIC brings back footage that is probably 90% as good as the Phantom series. And it's only 20% of the footprint and the weight, at least in the case of the Mini. Now, with the Mini, you can shoot at 2.7K resolution. You cannot shoot at 4K. But with the MAVIC 2 Zoom, you can shoot at 4K. So typically, I'm shooting footage with the MAVIC 2 Zoom or the MAVIC Mini. And if you are a newcomer to drones, definitely check out my review of the MAVIC Mini here on YouTube, because I wore this thing out practically in January, February of 2020, traveling around Southeast Asia, and loved it. It was pretty much flawless. Never had a problem, never crashed it once, even taking it off from boats, going out in rivers and landing it on moving objects. I still managed to get through all that without a crash or dunking it in the water. And I attribute a lot of that to the MAVIC Mini stability, even in windy environments. And I find with the MAVIC Mini, they included pretty much everything you need and nothing you don't. The one thing about the Mini that you'll see from my review that I warn people about, it knows where the ground is, but it has no collision detection at all. So you could run this thing straight into a building or a tree or a power line, and you're not going to get any kind of advanced notice from the drone itself. So ironically, if you're getting a Mini, they may position this as a drone for beginners. If you're a beginner, be very, very careful. Obviously, start out in an open field and work your way into a comfortable zone before you start trying advanced maneuvers with this, because it's not going to give you any warning. Ironically, the more expensive drones, they are not necessarily positioned to beginners, but they have all this collision detection stuff. A lot of times professionals turn off. I've had problems with my MAVIC 2 Zoom collision detection being a little overly sensitive. And sometimes even if I'm 400 feet in the air and not near anything, it will misread the environment and it will warn me of a collision and actually stop the shot in midair. So at times I've had to actually turn off collision detection on my MAVIC 2 Zoom. So if you're new to drones, look long and hard at the MAVIC Mini. I don't think you can go wrong with this, especially for the price. It's $399. But I do recommend you get the Fly More package. For an extra $100, you're going to get a couple of extra batteries, an external battery charger, and a case. And I find that that's probably worthwhile, because what did I do once I got my $400 MAVIC Mini? I immediately bought a case for it, and I ended up buying an extra battery. And I really wish that I had an external battery charger, because without that, you have to plug a USB, I guess it's USB-C cable into the drone. Actually, it's just USB micro cable into the drone to recharge it. So that process is a little bit annoying, especially if you're traveling and you want to recharge a lot of batteries. So that's it, guys. A brief live stream discussion of the Phantom versus MAVIC. I'm coming down squarely on the side of the MAVIC in this one. And it all has to do with, let's see, one second. I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to show you some MAVIC Mini footage if I can get it to work. I'm coming down on the MAVIC just for portability. I mean, because I found that the MAVIC gets you most of the footage while just weighing a fraction of what the Phantom weighs and taking up a fraction of the space. So I like the MAVIC. What do you like? And if you don't like DJI drones, if you have another favorite drone that you prefer, then chime in. Let me know what kind of drone you like, because I'll get one and I'll review it. I'm not really a fanboy. Hey, Gardner. Thank you. Michael Hensley asked if I have a commercial drones pilot's license. I have not really pursued a commercial drones license. I don't sell my footage. I do use my footage for creating videos, obviously. I don't sell it as stock footage or anything like that. I mean, maybe I will in the future. And, you know, these days, a lot of times I'm just toting around the MAVIC Mini. Michael says he started with the Mini, now thinks the MAVIC 2 Zoom is for him. I love the MAVIC 2 Zoom. I mean, if you have the space, you can still toss it into a backpack and take it just about anywhere. I'll pick up my MAVIC 2 Zoom. Yeah, I think I really love the zoom features. I love the collision detection overall. I love having that sort of peace of mind with it. And it's been a great drone. You get all the quick shot modes with this one, and it's very stable. Now, you're going to be surprised if you've never held one of these at the weight difference between the Zoom and the Mini. I mean, the Mini is light as a feather. 249 grams. It probably weighs about the same as the battery for the big boy. And I'm going to point out to those of you who are looking for a drone, also keep in mind, DJI rolls out a new drone every once in a while. I'm hearing some rumors that there may be an update to the MAVIC Air series. Now, the MAVIC Air costs around $900, so it's more than twice what the MAVIC Mini costs. And that would be probably about $400 or $500 less than the MAVIC 2 Zoom. And so it's sort of positioned in the middle there in terms of weight and features. You know, DJI really has dialed this in so that you have to pay more to get even more software features. It's kind of frustrating to me because I wish they would just max out the software of all these different products, or at least allow us to purchase firmware upgrades. Like the MAVIC Mini, I think, is a wonderful piece of hardware. Give us the opportunity to upgrade our software so we can have the best software on that piece of hardware. And I can guarantee you a lot of people would be using that drone. And frankly, that may be why DJI doesn't do it. They don't want to cannibalize their sales. But, you know, something Steve Jobs said at Apple, if we don't cannibalize ourselves, someone else will. I mean, when Jobs introduced the iPhone, he knew he was killing iPod sales, but he created the iPhone. So I really, you know, I really wish DJI would empower the MAVIC Mini with all the software features within reason that the higher end models have. So that's it, guys. I'm going to wrap up this little live stream. I appreciate your bearing with me. I am experimenting. If you hadn't figured it out, this is a new live stream setup. I want to be doing a lot more live streaming in the future because I think it's fun and it's a great way to communicate directly with you guys. But I'm learning, and something that's happened in the current climate, all the live streaming gear has been selling out everywhere. And I'm talking about all of the better webcams and so forth. So I've kind of rigged together a webcam setup using one of my old Nikons as my webcam. So hopefully I've been in focus and clear. The quality of the live stream at 720p right now, I'm going to try to eventually beef that up to 4K. But we're going to have to live with good old-fashioned 720p for now. And unfortunately, we're going to have to live with some of my live streaming growing pains as I learn how to use this software and this hardware. But I think it'll be a lot of fun moving forward. And what I love is I can interact with people directly, like Michael, who says, I was an Army helicopter pilot. The best advice is to make clearing turns before flying into confined areas. Will probably prevent crashing into obstacles. Yes, I think that is great advice. Even with as much experience as I have, I almost crashed my Phantom 4 a few weeks ago, I was doing some footage of a friend's property, and he had this old barn on his property, and I was about a half a mile away from this barn. And I rather recklessly decided to fly my Phantom 4 very slowly through this barn. Now, there were no animals or people in the barn, and the only thing I was risking really was my drone. But sure enough, I did manage to clip a fence, maybe going through that barn. And that actually kind of reminds me of something, just to point out another difference between the Phantom and the Mavic. Landing gear, the Phantom series has these really pronounced legs or landing gear on the bottom. And they do act somewhat to protect the gimbal and camera apparatus. And they really help you if you're taking off in different environments that might be, let's say, muddy or grassy. If you don't have one of those little launch pads, it's kind of nice to be able to set down these legs and landing gear. The Mavic series pretty much sits flat on the ground. They do have very small little legs on the bottom, but they don't really give you a lot of clearance. So if you have a Mavic, it's a good idea to carry around one of those little landing pads. I've got one. Don't use it as much as I probably should. But I would say also, with regard to not crashing your drone, this could be the subject of an entire video. But the first time, before I take off the drone, the first thing I do is I do a scan of the entire area. I look for tree branches, obviously. I look for power lines, or a big one, and buildings, obviously. Also look up. And I know that sounds silly, but there was one time when I was in a hurry, stopped our truck and our Airstream, put the drone out. Never get in a hurry when you're flying a drone. And I took the drone off, and there was a tree branch. It was about 20 or 30 feet up in the air that had grown out and was over the drone. And when I took the drone off, went straight up, collided with the branch, very nearly lost the drone, but I did not. And that was with a Phantom 4 series. The Phantom 4 is pretty rugged, and it is designed to withstand a little bit of abuse out in the field. So I've been a little bit rough on our Phantoms over the years, and most of them have survived quite well. The Mavic feels more fragile to me. The Mavic Mini, I don't know how well it's going to hold up if you have, some kind of bad accident or wreck with it. But that's a few thoughts about the Phantom versus the Mavic. I appreciate you guys tuning in. Next time we will schedule these farther in advance, and hopefully we'll do them on a regular basis, because I'd like to be able to talk to you about a lot of different topics, mostly photography, but occasionally if something really interesting is going on in the world, maybe we will talk about it here. This channel is for videos that don't quite fit with our other channel called Long Long Honeymoon. Long Long Honeymoon is really about RV travel and travel in general. But I think this channel is going to be more about photography and maybe international travel, and maybe what's going on in the world, if anything interesting is happening. Has anything interesting been happening in your life lately other than quarantine? All right, guys. As always, thank you for tuning in. This has been an episode of the Shawn Michaels Simulation live stream. Stay tuned. We will do more of these in the future. Bye.